a shattered kennel, a German shepherd, foaming at the mouth, and a little girl who saw something no one else did. This isn't just another rescue story. It's a powerful journey of trauma, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a wounded animal and the child who refused to give up on him. When smoke filled the shelter and panic took over, one small voice rose above the chaos. Don't leave him. What happened next changed everything. And you won't believe how this dog repaid that one moment of kindness in a way no one saw coming. So stay with us, because this story, it'll grab your heart and never let go. It started with a piercing scream, slicing through the sleepy calm of early morning at the Maple Hollow Animal Sanctuary. 2 volunteers froze, then bolted toward the sound. One of them caught a glimpse, just a blur of black and tan muscle tearing through the hallway, teeth bared, foam streaking his mouth, a twisted kennel door hanging by a single hinge, clearly torn open from the inside. And in the middle of the chaos stood Ranger, a German shepherd, wild-eyed, trembling, his ears pinned, his body coiled tight like a bowstring ready to snap. Behind their enclosures, the other animals cowered, sensing what humans sometimes miss, the dread thick in the air. Dana, once a trauma nurse, now a devoted shelter volunteer, had seen her share of emergencies. But nothing like this. Staff scrambled. Someone shouted, "Get the tranquilizer. He's unpredictable." The dart hit his flank. Ranger staggered, then collapsed. But while others whispered about putting him down, Dana saw something different. It wasn't rage, it was fear. Pure, raw, overwhelming fear. They told her his story later. Ranger had been found near the charred remains of an old farmhouse on the edge of Milbridge County. His fur streaked with ash, a half-melted chain still clinging to his neck. Animal control said he growled at everyone, bit a handler on day 1, broke through a gate on day 2. No one could approach without gloves, shields, or sedatives. But Dana didn't see a monster. She saw a siren, a creature too hurt to trust. That night, while he lay sedated in the infirmary, she knelt beside him. She cleaned the burns gently with warm saline, her hands steady, even as he growled in his sleep. His legs were torn with deep gashes, the skin under his collar raw, and in every breath, every twitch, there was haunted tension. Dana said nothing. She just worked, slow, tender, whispering softly, asking nothing in return. And in the days that followed, she kept coming back, always while he was sedated, always when the world was quiet. She'd change his bandages, top off his water, and then she'd sit, sometimes reading, sometimes humming, just being there. The staff didn't get it. "That one's broken," someone muttered. "He's dangerous." But Dana recognized something others didn't. The same pain she'd seen in soldiers returning from war, in patients who didn't need a diagnosis, but a witness. Ranger didn't need discipline. He needed mercy. So she waited. And one spring morning, someone else saw what she did. It was the start of spring break when Dana's daughter, Lily, came to the shelter for the very first time. Dana hadn't planned on it. She had too many shifts that week and no sitter. So, she packed Lily's backpack with snacks, some coloring books, and gave her one simple instruction. Stay close, okay? But Lily wasn't the kind of kid who sat still. While Dana was elbow-deep in the supply closet, Lily wandered, all the way to the back kennels. And that's when she saw him, Ranger, still tense, still scarred, still glaring at the world like it had turned its back on him. But Lily, she didn't flinch. She didn't say a word. She just stood there a few feet away watching. Her head tilted, her eyes tracing every flick of his tail, every twitch of his ears. Her mom had always told her, dogs speak with their bodies, not just their barks. And Ranger? He was screaming, without a sound. Lily didn't do what most adults would have done. She didn't rush him. She sat, cross-legged on the floor, far enough not to be a threat. Then, slowly, she reached into her lunchbox and pulled out a slice of turkey. She slid it forward, just far enough for him to notice, but not close enough to scare him. Then, she turned sideways, and waited. When Ranger's growl softened into more of a suspicious huff, she leaned in, just a little, and whispered, "You look tired." He didn't bark, didn't growl. He just stared at her, as if trying to understand. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled drawing. A sketch of a dog with big ears and a bright pink heart floating above its head. "I made this," she said softly. "It's for you." Moments later, Dana turned the corner and froze. Her heart caught in her throat. Her daughter, that close to him? But Ranger hadn't moved. His ears were up, his eyes not angry, but curious. And over the next few days, something became very clear. Lily didn't see Ranger as dangerous. She saw him as a mystery, not a project, not a problem, a puzzle, one she was meant to understand. She offered no commands, no demands, just quiet presence. And slowly, something began to shift. The breakthrough didn't come with barking or tail wags, came quietly, in silence. Ranger no longer lunged when Lily passed by. He didn't growl when she spoke. He just watched her. Every day Lily came back, sometimes with a storybook, sometimes with an old blanket. She never rushed him, never reached into his space. She just sat beside his kennel, sharing little bits of her world, talking about school, the raccoon that knocked over their trash cans, or her dream of having a pet dragon. Ranger would stay tucked in the corner, eyes locked on her, ears twitching gently with the rhythm of her voice. And though he was still wary, he seemed just a little less alone. Then everything changed. It happened on a still, gray afternoon. An electrical spark in the back storage room started a fire. Smoke began creeping through the corridors. Alarms blared. Staff scrambled to evacuate the animals. Dana grabbed Lily's hand and rushed into the smoke-filled hallway. But when they reached Ranger's kennel, he was still inside. Trapped. "He might bite. We don't have time," someone shouted behind them. Inside, Ranger stood frozen, trembling. The smoke triggered something deep, something buried, a memory, maybe a nightmare. He pressed into the back of the kennel, shaking. Lily's grip tightened around Dana's sleeve. "Please," she cried. "Don't leave him. He's scared. Not bad." Over and over, her voice cut through the chaos. "Please, someone help him." Finally, one young volunteer stepped forward, heart pounding, and tossed a leash into the cage. "Come on, boy," she whispered. Ranger hesitated, his body low, tail still. Then he moved, slowly, trembling, and as he stepped into the hallway, coughing, eyes wide, his gaze searched through the haze until it found Lily. He didn't bark. He didn't run. He just stood there, smoke swirling around him, ash clinging to his coat. And at the far end of the hallway, Lily knelt, her hands covering her mouth, eyes filled with tears. Their eyes locked. Ranger took a step, then another. This time, it wasn't fear. It was hope. And then, he did something no one expected. He lay down, right there, in the middle of the hallway, and let out a long, trembling breath, his eyes never leaving Lily. From that moment forward, Ranger was different. That night he didn't pace. He didn't growl at every passing footstep. Instead, he sat near the front of the kennel, ears alert, waiting. Waiting for her. Waiting for Lily. Because this time, when the fire came, someone had stayed. Someone had called for him. And he hadn't been left behind. The change didn't happen overnight. But it was real. Ranger still flinched at loud sounds, still kept his distance from unfamiliar voices. But when Lily walked into the room, his world steadied. One morning, she arrived holding something wrapped in a towel, a small, worn-out plush German shepherd, the kind of toy a child carries for years. Its fur was matted, one ear sewn back on with red thread. Dana raised an eyebrow. "Sweetheart, are you sure? That's your favorite." Lily nodded. "I want him to have it." She knelt beside the kennel and slid the toy gently through the bars. Ranger stiffened. He sniffed once, then again, and instead of tearing it to pieces, he nudged it, gently, then picked it up in his mouth and walked it to the back of his kennel. curling his body around it like it was something precious. The rage in his eyes faded. What took its place was something softer. Trust. From that moment on, the plush stayed with him. Through every feeding, every storm, every moment of fear. Eventually, Lily was allowed brief visits inside the kennel, always under Dana's careful watch. She brushed his coat slowly, gently, and Ranger leaned into her hand, eyes closed, calm. Dana tried once, reaching in to scratch behind his ears. Ranger let out a soft growl, not aggressive, just unsure. Dana backed off. It was clear now. Ranger had chosen his person, and that person was Lily. It was a quiet Thursday morning when the phone rang at Maple Hollow Animal Sanctuary. Dana had just finished cleaning Ranger's kennel, humming a tune Lily often sang under her breath. The shelter manager called her over, holding the phone with a strange look. "You need to hear this." On the other end was an elderly man, Mr. Harlan Whitaker. His voice, worn thin with age and grief. Nearly a year ago, he said, his house had been broken into, and his dog, a retired police German shepherd named Axel, had been stolen. He'd searched for months, filed reports, put up flyers. Then, he said, his voice cracking, "A friend sent me a photo from your shelter's website. I'd know that face anywhere. That's my boy." Dana's breath caught in her throat. Ranger, Axel, he hadn't been abandoned. He'd been taken. And the fire, the fear, the trauma, suddenly it all made sense. The shelter arranged a visit for the next day. Mr. Whitaker arrived slowly, leaning on a cane. In his other hand, he held a faded photo of a younger ranger sitting beside him on a wooden porch, both of them smiling. Partners, family. Ranger was lying in the back of his kennel when the old man stepped inside. First, he didn't move. Then his ears twitched. His body tensed, not with fear, but with recognition. Mr. Whitaker knelt beside the bars and carefully placed the photo down. "You saved my life once," he whispered. "Remember that night in the snow? When I collapsed by the mailbox? You barked until the neighbors came. You always knew what mattered." Silence followed. Long. Still. Ranger tilted his head. His ears flicked. Then Mr. Whitaker reached into his coat and pulled out something familiar. An old leather collar with a faded brass tag. "You used to wear this," he said gently. "You always hated the tags. Chewed every single one off." Ranger's eyes locked onto the collar. And then a sound. Barely audible. A soft, uncertain whimper. Dana gasped. Mr. Whitaker gave a bittersweet smile. "You were the bravest partner I ever had. I didn't stop looking. Not for a single day." Ranger stepped forward, then froze. His head lowered. Torn between two worlds. He took one more step, then backed away. Not afraid, just unsure. Like a soldier returning from war, wondering if the battle's truly over. Mr. Whitaker didn't push. "You don't have to come back, boy," he whispered. "Not if you've found where you belong." Across the room, Lily stood silently, clutching the worn plush toy Ranger had adopted as his own. And Ranger? He looked between the man who had raised him and the girl who had saved him. Then he lay down, resting his head on his paws, suspended between memory and the life he had now. 2 days later, everything changed again. Lily didn't come home from the library. At first, Dana thought she'd just lost track of time. Maybe wandered off with a friend. But by noon, the panic set in. Calls went unanswered. The librarian said she hadn't even seen Lily that day. Dana's voice shook as she gave the police the description. 8 years old, curly hair, bright red hoodie, back at the shelter, before a single word was spoken. Ranger knew something was wrong. That morning, when Lily didn't arrive like she always did, he started pacing. Wouldn't eat. His ears snapped at every sound, every footstep. When the front door opened, he rushed toward it. But it wasn't her. Hours later, when Dana burst through the doors, shaky, frantic, she barely noticed Ranger. But the shelter director stepped in front of her. "Dana, listen. I've been thinking about what Mr. Whitaker said, about how Ranger used to track people." Dana blinked. "You think?" I think he knows something's wrong. She turned and saw him, Ranger, standing by the door, body tense, eyes locked on hers. Waiting. Let him try, the director said softly. Let him find her. She didn't hesitate. She clipped on the leash, dropped to her knees, and whispered, "Help me find her." And he didn't wait. Ranger surged forward, nose low to the ground, focused, determined. Dana ran with him down back alleys across intersections. People stepped aside, watching as the German Shepherd pulled her through the streets like a dog on a mission. 3 blocks from the shelter, near an old, abandoned bookstore, Ranger stopped. He barked, once, sharp, urgent. Then he clawed at a small alley gate. Dana pushed it open and froze. There, curled beneath a crumbling overhang on the cold concrete, was Lily. Her knees were scraped, her lips bloodied, but her eyes were open. "Lily!" Dana cried, rushing to her side. Ranger didn't bark again. He just walked over, sat beside her, and gently pressed his head into her shoulder. Lily burst into tears, not from pain, from relief. Dana wrapped her arms around both of them. She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't need to, because Ranger had found her, and he hadn't stopped, until he did. The story spread quickly, first as whispers among volunteers at Maple Hollow, then as headlines across Clearwater County. Rescue dog finds missing girl. German Shepherd tracks down child through city streets. Reporters showed up. Neighbors dropped off flowers and thank you cards. Children pressed their faces to the shelter windows, just hoping to catch a glimpse of the dog who never gave up. But Ranger? He didn't care about cameras or praise. He only cared about Lily. Every morning, he waited by the gate, ears twitching at the faintest echo of her voice. And every afternoon, when she came bouncing in with her backpack and her curls in a messy ponytail, Ranger's eyes softened. His whole body relaxed. He followed her everywhere. Not pushing, not demanding, just there, a steady shadow at her side. Dana watched quietly, full of awe. The way they moved together, like they shared some rhythm no one else could hear. Lily never tried to train him or change him. She didn't need him to perform or obey. She just let him be. And in return, he gave her everything. A week after the rescue, the shelter held a meeting. Dozens of adoption requests had come in, from nearby towns, former officers, dog lovers across the region. But Dana stood at the front of the room with a letter in her hand and tears in her eyes. "I think we all know where Ranger belongs now," she said softly. She turned to Lily, sitting beside her, holding that same worn plush toy Ranger had never let go of. "If you'll have him," Dana whispered, kneeling, "Ranger is yours." Lily's eyes widened. She looked at her mom, and Dana nodded, already crying. And just like that, Ranger wasn't a shelter dog anymore. He was family. Life after that didn't come with fanfare. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, honest, real. Ranger slept at the foot of Lily's bed, waking only when she did. Every day after school, he waited for her at the gate, still and alert. In the backyard, she'd read to him stories of dragons and explorers and faraway places. Sometimes she whispered secrets. Other times, she just sat in silence, letting the soft weight of his presence remind her she was never alone. And when she cried, he didn't lick her tears. He simply leaned closer, steady, silent. Years passed. Lily grew taller, softer. She wasn't the loudest voice in class, or the first to raise her hand. But when someone was hurting, when someone needed quiet understanding, they found her. Her teachers noticed. Her friends did too. She didn't try to fix people. She just stayed, like Ranger always had. On the day Lily graduated high school, she wore a pale blue dress and carried a photo of her and Ranger from the day they became inseparable. He couldn't climb the stage anymore, but he sat in the front row, tail wagging slowly as she accepted her diploma. The applause echoed around them, but Lily looked only at him, her eyes shining, because he had walked her through the dark, waited beside her in the quiet, until she was ready to move forward on her own. Ranger passed away one summer afternoon. He lay on his favorite rug, sunlight warming his graying fur. Lily, now nearly grown, sat by his side and whispered, "You saved me. I'll never forget." He sighed once, and then he was still. But Ranger's story didn't end there. Lily carried him with her, into her studies, into her life. She learned animal behavior. She trained in trauma-informed rescue. She worked with shelters, just like the one where it all began. And when she sat beside a trembling German shepherd, she didn't try to fix them. She understood them. Sometimes, she would hum softly, just like she had for Ranger. And slowly, those broken dogs began to trust again. Years later, another dog came into her life, rescued from fire, from fear, from another dark past. But none would ever replace him. Because love like Ranger's doesn't vanish. It lingers, in memory, in movement, in the quiet space where healing begins. It lives on. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who could use a little hope today. And we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever met a dog who changed your life? Tell us your story in the comments. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for more powerful stories of healing, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds that stay with us forever.